Hello Internet. Right now we're gonna be watching a video from Godzilla guy. I'm gonna upload the volume so you guys can hear. This is gonna be a pretty good video.
Godzilla Minus One. Though already been out for a few months now, it is still a hot topic in the Godzilla community, and just the simple moviegoers are still talking about
I love it.
And the MonsterVerse. With the GXK trailer just coming out and Legacy of Monsters just finishing, it's also a hot topic at the moment. But a question has been going around, like always, whenever there's a new Godzilla. Blank Godzilla versus blank Godzilla. And well, right now it's Minus One versus Legendary. And well, for any longtime fans, you know we do this differently. Rather than throwing them into a ring, let's swap their fights. Hello everybody, I'm your ref Godzilla guy, and today we'll be answering, how far would Godzilla Minus One make it in the MonsterVerse? So some of you guys remember I put Heisei Godzilla into the MonsterVerse a while back, and he made it pretty far, making it past Muto Prime but stopping at Kong. So let's see how Minus One would do. His bracket will be a little different. So, Godzilla Minus One's list is Ramorak, Behemoth, Emulak, Scylla, the male Muto, Kong without his axe, Muto Prime, and finally King Ghidorah. So, let's start. So first we need to establish Minus One's feats. Firstly, his strength. He can lift just under 30,000 tons, meaning he can definitely throw around quite a few of these kaiju. Next up is his speed. And while we don't really have anything for the actual speed category, we do know he's pretty agile, being able to almost bite a plane out of the air that was traveling at 446 miles an hour. His durability is also pretty good, being able to withstand his own atomic blast, which is calculated to be 17 megatons. For reference, the Castle Bravo underneath that MonsterVerse Goji tanks is 15 megatons. So while he's nowhere near as durable as later MonsterVerse Godzilla, he is slightly comparable to him. And finally, his most important...
Sorry guys.
Calculated to be 17 megatons. For reference, the Castle Bravo underneath that MonsterVerse Goji tanks is 15 megatons. From the Operations Crossroad nuke, meaning whoever's going to fight him has to be able to do a lot of area damage very quickly. The only thing Minus One's going to have to look out for is the fact that this will be his first time fighting another kaiju, while most of the MonsterVerse kaiju already fought quite a few kaiju themselves. Before we get into it, I do want to mention three things. Firstly, thank you Goji Chronic for the help. You're the only power scaler I fully trust. You're the GOAT, man, and everybody watching, make sure to go check him out. Secondly, this is not a power scaling video. I'm not a scaler. And finally, size doesn't determine power. The amount of comments I've gotten in the past 5 of these videos have been wild. People saying like, oh, well, Final Wars Godzilla's taller, so he wins. Literally no. And one rule. If you do this how this would truly go, Minus One isn't making it far at all. And given that the MonsterVerse kaiju absorb radiation, and Minus One's beam is quite literally just a nuke, it'd be kind of unfair. And since you guys want a fun video and I want a fun video, we're going to be assuming that the MonsterVerse kaiju can't absorb the blast for, energy. Anyways, with all that yapping aside, let's hop in. First up is Ramorak. Ramorak is the giant skull crawler. The only thing Ramorak really has going for him in this fight is the fact that he's able to fight, given he lives on the most dangerous place on Earth, that being Skull Island, meaning he has to beat off the giant chameleons, giant hawks, and of course previous Kongs. Though this should be pretty easy, given he only weighs 100 tons, and he got injured by a ship anchor. So while this is Minus One's first time fighting, he should move on pretty easily. Except with Behemoth, and all I have to say is, Behemoth sucks, preying on his downfall, Methuselah gang on top. Anyways, Behemoth's only thing he's got is regen, which, while impressive, it's no match for Minus One's, especially given his horrible durability, being packed up and damaged by a monster made of nature, such as simple trees and mud. So a simple atomic breath should do the job. So Godzilla Minus One moves on. Next up is the aforementioned tree, Emulak. Emulak is a very unique kaiju, using telekinesis to build his body, though there is an outlying issue. He built himself using trees. Now, yes, he's more durable than the average tree. His body seems to somehow change the tree's durability. It's still, at the end of the day, wood and dirt. Yeah. So, pitting a kaiju made of trees, a flammable object, up against a nuclear fire-breathing lizard.
Who's gonna win that?
I don't think that's good to go in Emulak's favor here. Now, in the Heisei video, I went over this and said how Emulak has a chance of beating Heisei Godzilla. That's just due to Heisei Godzilla's noticeable weakness, that being his second brain. But luckily for Minus One, he doesn't have that disadvantage. So again, somehow, Godzilla Minus One moves on. Next up is the giant spider Scylla. Now, Scylla will be the first kaiju that Minus One will have a hard time with, given her toxic fog she shows in Godzilla vs. the Justice League. No, I'm not saying they're canon or, timeline connected, but it's, reasonable to assume she has the ability. Because they're apparently copies, quote-unquote. And no, Scylla doesn't have any ice breath despite popular belief. And at the moment, we don't really have many feats for Scylla. Now, while sure she went toe-to-toe with Godzilla, she got packed up really fast, so... yeah. So again, I do believe 1 or 2 atomic blasts should do the job, or at least put her out of commission. Next up is the male Muto. Now this is where it starts to get complicated, as the Melmetal could easily push around the 20,000 metric ton -1, and he is much faster. And I mean, besides durability and regeneration, Melmetal is better at everything. Now, the issue is, well, sure, -1, has his durability and regen going for him. I don't think the Melmetal could do enough damage fast enough to take him out. And oh god, you smell that? Oh god, it's a power scalar writing paragraph on how the Melmetal's durability is better because he took an attack from Monster vs. Godzilla, and Monster vs. Godzilla takes nukes to the face, blah, 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 blah. Now, sure, the Melmetal takes attacks that are, powerful and comparable to those of the force of a nuke. His overall fatality blow is him just being slammed into a building. I mean, he got stabbed all the way through by simple steel. So the Melmetal's durability is kind of all over the place. So yeah, with a few shots of atomic breath, and most likely some biting and scratching, -1 moves on with high difficulty. Next up is Kong with no axe. Dead. Now before the Monsterverse haters go nuts saying, oh, -1 could light him on fire like it did on Skull Island. We know that somehow Kong's fur became fire resistant to an extent, or at least to the point where he can, put it out with a few taps. I mean, as we see in GVK, Kong gets hit by an atomic breath and then just pats it out. So now it comes down to his regen, and well, yeah, I think Kong can win. While he has to consistently beat -1 to a pulp, after enough times, -1 would just be a mist scattered across the ground. So -1 makes it past the Melmetal, but not Kong. Now if the Kaiju could take in the blast radiation, -1 probably wouldn't even made it past Behemoth, but given, we need to give him a fighting chance, we gave him that cheat. Anyways, I hope you all enjoyed, and please consider subscribing if you want to see more Godzilla and Kaiju-related content.
6 minutes? No. Okay. Sorry, Godzilla guy. Let's move on. Oh, you thought this was one video, guys. We're gonna react to for about 15 minutes, because who likes short videos? I'm gonna move on. Can Legendary survive the Heisei, and can Heisei survive the Monster Wars? That's the one we're gonna be watching. I love you guys.
I'm Doog, and this is Bibu. Save hundreds with Liberty Bibbity.
Doug and Limu.
What did he say, Bibu?
Poo-poo. I can't believe I said that on camera. I'm so sorry.
Monsterverse Godzilla, the modern-day titan with millions of fans, having the most complex and interesting lore of any era, and Heisei Godzilla, the mutated dinosaur that turned into Earth's greatest hero. If you saw last week's video, we concluded that Heisei Godzilla would make it pretty far into the Monsterverse. So today we'll be doing the reverse. How far can Monsterverse Godzilla make it into the Heisei era? Now, of course, Monsterverse Godzilla will go through a gauntlet just like Heisei did. This gauntlet, in order from least to greatest, is Biollante, Bachelor Larva, Rodan, King Ghidorah, Super Mechagodzilla, Space Godzilla, and finally Destoroyah. Without any more wait, let's dive in. How far could Monsterverse Godzilla make it in the Heisei era? First up, we have Biollante. Monsterverse Godzilla would fare well in this fight, due to his speed and combat advantage. The only thing he really has to watch out for is Biollante's tendrils, which can be used to grab and bite onto Godzilla. Though he could end this fight quickly, just like Heisei Godzilla, and shoot a beam into Biollante's mouth, bursting out the other side of her head, killing the giant plant. Just saying, Biollante's an Amy-like victim, go cry. Next up, we have Bachelor Larva, who is widely considered to be more powerful than his grown counterpart. Little fun fact, Batra's original name was Gigamoth. Though his larva form is very powerful, it only really has one ability, that being his Prism Beam, which is very powerful. And he also has some really good durability. It will take many of Heisei Godzilla's hits. The thing Monsterverse Godzilla will have to watch out for, as we said, is Batra's beam and durability. But he should win this fight pretty easily, just due to him being able to quickly overpower the larva. The beam or stomp a few times should do the job. Next is Rodan. Not the fire version, just normal Rodan. The only thing Rodan has going for him is his speed, being able to fly at Mach 3, much faster than any other Titan in the Monsterverse. However, he is very, very weak. All Monsterverse Godzilla has to do is land a beam, or just grab him, since Rodan can only attack close up. Monsterverse Godzilla would do what Heisei did, grabbing him and pummeling him with slaps and scratches, eventually overwhelming and killing Rodan. Next up, we have King Ghidorah. This version of King Ghidorah has the normal range of abilities, including flight, gravity beams, hurricane winds, and constricting necks. Luckily for Monsterverse Godzilla, this is pretty much a lighter and smaller version of the Ghidorah he faced back in 2019. Again, Monsterverse Godzilla will make it through, since this version of Ghidorah is relatively slow in comparison to the one in the Monsterverse. And like I already said, he's much lighter and smaller. and I doubt Ghidorah could pick up Godzilla unlike his Monsterverse counterpart. With low difficulty, I can see Monsterverse Godzilla moving on to the next battle. Next, we have Super Mechagodzilla. This is where Monsterverse Godzilla is going to struggle. Mechagodzilla, though not agile in the slightest, has an ungodly amount of weapons, which include the Mega Buster, laser cannons, shock anchors, G-crushers, paralyzing missiles, tranquilizing missiles, plasma grenade, diamond coating, and high-power laser beam cannons thanks to Garuda. Firstly, this is practically a 2v1 thanks to Garuda and Mechagodzilla. Now, if we start this fight close up, Monsterverse Godzilla would fare well. But all these fights are started with a little bit of distance in between them. Though I think Monsterverse Godzilla could close the gap quickly, the new problem is Mechagodzilla's durability. Monsterverse Godzilla would have a hard time getting through his diamond layer. But I do think he would just barely be able to win this. And when I say barely, I mean barely. I would say Monsterverse Godzilla wins this fight with insane difficulty. Next, we have Space Godzilla. Space Godzilla solo is like no difficulty at all. Now maybe if he worked together with Mogira to defeat Space Godzilla, then maybe he could win. But even with Mogira, I still doubt they would win. Now before we end, I want to add that there is one kaiju from the Monsterverse that sweeps the Heisei era.
Doug.
Even when you bring scaling into things. That being Doug. Sponsor time. Here in front of you today is Spiderhawk Studios version 2 Doug.
Not sponsored.
This figure has the paint job and detail of a Hiya Toys figure.
No, stop.
In this video, I am being 100% serious. This thing is phenomenal. I will eventually get around to comparing this one to the version 1 as well. This is a fully Godzilla Guy approved figure. If you like anything kaiju related, I promise you'll like Spiderhawk.
Alright, no more outro because that's gonna take a while. Finally, the one that's gonna get me mad. Could Heisei survive the Monster Wars?
Heisei Godzilla, first appearing all the way back in December 15th, 1984. To this day, he has a large following and still appears in a lot of kaiju media. Most impressively, he is widely considered to be the most powerful Godzilla. And Monsterverse Godzilla, the modern-day titan that has ruled the box office with each of his movies. These two Godzillas are possibly the biggest kaiju debate out there. And with both of them having new films coming out, thanks to Godzilla x Kong and Godzilla vs. Megalon, there's no better time to cover this argument.
It's not.
However, we'll be doing it a little bit differently. Instead of pitting them face to face, we will see who can hold the longest if they switch continuities. In this week's video, we will be discussing and figuring out how far Heisei Godzilla can make it in the Monsterverse. So to truly answer this question, we need to set up a gauntlet of sorts for Heisei to traverse through. He'll fight these kaiju in this order to see where he stands in the Monsterverse. Scylla, Behemoth, Amulok, the male and female Muto, Muto Prime, Kong with his axe, Mechagodzilla, King Ghidorah, and finally Shinamura. Now it's time. Will Heisei clear and become the new Alpha Titan, or will he die trying? Let's find out. First up, we have Scylla. Scylla is a giant spider-like titan, standing at 341 feet tall, or 103.9 meters tall, already being taller than Godzilla himself, who is only 100 meters tall. But don't let height decide this fight. Scylla has a very small range of abilities, including temperature manipulation, which allows her to keep the ice caps cold. Bacteria generation. This allows her to convert her nutrients into waterborne bacteria. Shell. Scylla's shell offers great defense from attacks, and she has the ability to leave her shell if she's stuck, though it will make her very vulnerable to attacks. Tentacles. Her tentacles are very strong and fast, even being able to knock over the almost 100,000 metric ton Godzilla. And amphibianosis. This allows her to survive on both water and land. Now how will Heisei hold up? Well, he would have some difficulty with all these kaiju. Not because he's weak, but rather because he's slow. The kaiju in the Heisei era were fast at times, but none of them were agile. At least not as much as the Monsterverse. Scylla would do the same thing to this Goji as she did the last, wrapping her body around him. But this is where she would make a huge mistake, thanks to Heisei Godzilla's pulse. Unlike Monsterverse Godzilla, who can only pulse if he's injured or if he's extremely buffed, Heisei Godzilla at his base form can release a nuclear pulse. Now his pulse won't kill her, it more pushes his enemies back. This pulse would send Scylla flying backwards. But Heisei Godzilla doesn't know mercy. He would just shoot a beam, killing the arachnid. Next we have Behemoth. Behemoth will be more difficult up close thanks to his tusks, but Heisei Godzilla is somewhat smart, so he'll know not to get close. He would just stand from afar and beam, killing Behemoth quickly and easily. Next up we have Amulok. At this point, Heisei Godzilla might start to be intimidated due to Amulok's 121 meter tall stature, and also Amulok's weird assortment of abilities, which include telekinesis. This allows him to throw objects and part of his body at insane speeds, even being able to break off one of Behemoth's tusks. Camouflage. This is where Amulok hides in plain sight, hiding as a hill or an island. Toxin emission. This is where he can poison the water with ease. Psychic blast. This is where Amulek attaches onto an enemy and sends a blast to their brain, which is strong enough to kill some kaiju, or at least stun them depending on how powerful they are, though it does take a lot of energy to use. And finally, adaptability. This is how Amulek makes his body, using the surrounding area. Now all it will really take to kill Amulek is 1 or 2 atomic breaths. But, believe it or not, Amulek has a way to kill Godzilla, though it would be hard. If Amulek used his camouflage right, he could completely hide from Heisei, getting the jump on him, throwing himself at Heisei Godzilla, and doing as many psychic blasts as possible, which could end up severely injuring or even outright destroying Godzilla's second brain, immobilizing him, and killing him. But that's very unlikely.
But
if I were to guess, that's probably like a 1% chance. So Heisei Godzilla moves on.
clap,
Next, we have the hideous lovers, the male and female Mudos.
clap.
These two would give Heisei a run for his money,
Ooh.
thanks to their overwhelming size and agility.
Yeah.
Heisei would of course pulse, but at this point it would only really affect the male Mudo, since the female is just way too heavy for the pulse to really do anything. Heisei could still make it through as long as he stands his ground and stays aware of his surroundings, though he isn't the best at that. And the Mudos have an advantage thanks to their incredibly sharp claws, which would most likely cut deep into Heisei Godzilla, and just like Amulek, possibly injure his second brain. I still think Heisei Godzilla would make it through, though it would be very difficult for him due to his slow movement. Next, we have the Mudo Prime. This is where Heisei Godzilla will be very overwhelmed, due to the Mudo Prime's height and weight, coming in at 135 meters tall and 135,000 metric tons, which for reference is much taller than Destroya. Now if this fight started from a distance, it would quickly be a very close-up fight, thanks to Mudo Prime's burrowing, getting up close and unleashing an assault of punches and slams onto Heisei Godzilla. Now if you didn't know, Mudo Prime's punches are strong enough to break apart tectonic plates, though Heisei Godzilla could survive these punches to an extent. Now stepping away from battle analysis and dipping into the scaling side of things for a second, Heisei Godzilla apparently slams Batcher so hard that he cracks the tectonic plates. And from what I've heard from certain scalers, is that attack potency is equal to durability. So if we could slam him that hard, he should be able to take these attacks. So overall, there isn't much Mudo Prime can do, since if he got close, Heisei Godzilla could lift him and throw him far away, and then just beam as much as possible. So Heisei Godzilla once again moves on, though this would be very difficult for him. Next we have Godzilla's biggest enemy, Kong. And to add insult, Kong will also have his axe. For those who don't know, Kong's axe is made out of the dead remains of the other Titanic Mudos, and we'll also assume it's charged up. This will by far be the hardest kaiju Heisei has ever fought in before. Kong is much smarter, faster, agile, and has been in many more fights. Plus him having a supercharged axe just to add on. Heisei will have to rely on his pulses for this fight, since he would be outdone in hand-to-hand combat, and Kong would just absorb any beams he fires at him, though I doubt it'll be useful, due to Kong's weight. The only way I can see Heisei winning this is if he gets a beam in, meaning he would have to get Kong away from his axe, meaning he would have to let Kong get close, and most likely let himself get stabbed by the axe, in order to get it away from Kong. Then and only then, could he beam Kong a few times and kill him. There's one problem though. I don't think Godzilla is smart enough to think all that out, so the likelihood of him beating Kong is low. But even if he did, he's not making it past Mechagodzilla. Overall, Heisei made it really far, and it would be a force to be reckoned with in the Monsterverse. Now before I end this video, I want to explain something, which is that these videos that you see on screen are not scaling videos. I'm well aware scaling-wise, Heisei Godzilla would sweep the Monsterverse with like no difficulty at all. Think of it kind of like Goji Center. For example, take my Could Kong Survive Skull Island video. Scaling-wise, Kong would make it through pretty easily, but I need to be realistic in these battle analyses. For example, though Kong does scale higher than Kamazots, he has no experience with fighting a flyer, and has no good way to attack him effectively. So just keep that in mind before you comment that I suck at scaling. I hope that clears some stuff up. Stay tuned for next week's video to see where Monsterverse Godzilla makes it in the Heisei era. As always, keep collecting. Godzilla Guy out. See ya.
Get out the way.
No. Much longer video, much better video. Actually, I don't know. Well, I'm not gonna make this 20 minutes long. Bye. See you guys next time.